How my father's death brought us back together. I, 41F, been no contact with my parents, 67F/69M, and brother, 39M, for 3 years now. My childhood neighbor called me yesterday to tell me my dad died. I felt no emotion initially. I was polite. This person knows my family well. We talked about their family for a few minutes, and I hung up. I was seriously trying to not sound like a heartless bitch. I care. I always have. I hung up and was immediately angry, not the neighbor. Mad that my first thoughts were, how am I going to protect myself through all this? Instead of just being sad and grieving my father's death, some long background. Sorry, this really has been a lot over the years. A few months ago, my dad had an infection and needed heart surgery. They didn't think he would make it. He spent weeks in the hospital. Nobody reached out initially. The same neighbor, who is really good friends with my dad and family, reached out to me when they had a gut feeling I didn't know. I guessed my dad was asking for me. Turns out my mother contacted a distant cousin. I do talk with a cousin, but infrequently, and dropped hints to call me, stating they couldn't get a hold of me. He did reach out, and it was pretty clear she was putting him in the middle of this. I found out between the two of them, Dad had been in the hospital for a week, and extended fam was also there. So 5 PPL2, of which are retired social workers from a hospital setting, were all there to help her if she actually wanted me to know. Not to mention, they have staff for this kind of thing, and they are all standing in a hospital room with a land-like phone in the room. She was playing games, saying she tried to reach me. Yes, she is blocked on my end, but she also left me a message for my birthday 3 weeks prior. The neighbor said my dad was asking for me, so after a therapy session and some deliberation, I called. It went to voicemail. I simply said, "Hi, heard you were sick, love you, hope you're okay, nothing more." The next day, the neighbor told me he listened to my message and was happy. I had explained in the least dramatic and most logical way what was going on, as I know it's her friend, and thanked her for her communications. I got daily updates from the neighbor. Honestly, it was more than I would have gotten from contacting any family. I can't even get an accurate family medical history from them when I ask directly. So I was grateful. A few weeks of this, and then things tapered off as he returned home and was okay. No news was good news at that point. Well, the neighbor called to tell me he passed yesterday. We had a short conversation, polite, and I really didn't know what to say. I've been so far removed from any family for so long now, and I didn't want to put any ill feeling on her. I immediately after hanging up was just angry. Angry, like a few months ago, that I even have to be in this situation. Because damned if I do, damned if I don't. I had already been running through what may happen if he passed before and come to no conclusions. Now it's here and already a mess. I went full no contact of family 3 YRs ago when I had cancer. I know a lot about cancer, dare I say expert. I really wasn't worried about the cancer. I was trying to navigate the logistics of my care as I had just left a really toxic roommate and was practically homeless, couch surfing between friends and trying to figure out how I was going to do this, and knew what I was up for medically and up against emotionally. I spent the majority of my time in appointments and seeking some of avenues for any assistance I could get. My husband had stage 4 colon cancer for 5 years before his passing. He was only 45 at diagnosis, and I was widowed at 38 YRs old. I was so good at all this cancer knowledge stuff, I even guest lectured at an Ivy League med school. I knew my stuff. During my husband's illness, my parents were really trying to be supportive, but what they expected was so unreasonable. I would have to repeat myself constantly, and it was like I would tell them about our day, and then they would ask exactly what I just answered. Again and again. It even got to the point I had to tell them I couldn't give them a play-by-play because they were 1,200 meters away. And I am exhausted. I'd update them as necessary, but I really didn't want to talk about every little detail over and over, nor were they going to be my first call when we were in an emergent situation, as I needed my local support system to do their thing and help me simply because they were here and tangible. I never withheld info. I was in constant contact with them as well. At some point, it got so exhausting I had family be a go-between for me, as it was just too much to deal with the workload I already had as caregiver and slowly losing my husband to cancer. At DX, he was given weeks to maybe months to live, but lived 5 years. Long enough to see his youngest graduate from high school. He had 2 kids in my life from the ages of 4 and 6. I love them very much and had a good relationship with them. Their mother is another story altogether. She didn't make it easy for him to see his kids when he was dying, and trying to navigate all of that as well was really hard. When I got cancer, I knew it was really just a minor surgery, but I was berated with constant questioning. I explained myself 10x in a single conversation. It was like they didn't believe me. I have had a strained relationship with them since I moved out of the house at 18, really. I still maintained a good relationship, visited and called, participated in family events, offered help, etc. When I was 30, my grandmother died. She didn't like me. I kinda laughed it off. She told everyone I was a lesbian with a love child, yet knew every boyfriend I ever had. I think her distaste for me stemmed from my parents and a fight before I was born. Still, I showed up, treated her well, and cared for her in her times of need, not taking to heart any of her odd ways. One year, she handed me a present on Christmas, told me I didn't have anything, but I should open something, and handed me a gift that was my mother's, making sure I knew it wasn't mine when I was 17. Nonetheless, I laughed it off as random family drama and didn't take it to heart. My family knew. My brother and mother got gifts. Regardless, I took care of this woman's diabetes, brought her to APTS, did her grocery shopping, visited her almost weekly, driving myself over and attending to any needs she had. Why? I was told by my father, who also didn't like her, that it was my mother's mother and to please take care of her. Well, the old woman died 2 days before my birthday. I, of course, went to comfort my mother and help in any way I could. We were putting together collages for her services, and out of the blue, I was berated, yelled at, and questioned why I was even there, that I hated her and should be there. I don't hate anyone. Maybe she wasn't my favorite. But I didn't hate her. I tried to explain that I was there for my mother, to comfort her. That wasn't good enough. And I was then told I was unreliable. I was supposed to pick up a photo order in the morning from Staples, no problem. And basically a crappy daughter and human. All of this was unprovoked. I didn't say anything, not even sarcasm and wit about the woman. I knew my mom was upset. I left telling my father and mother I didn't do anything to deserve this kind of treatment and they needed therapy. That I wasn't speaking to them again if this was how I was going to be treated for doing nothing but showing up to support my family. My drunk father was the leader of this attack. A few years passed and I had still been in contact with my mother. My husband really was the one to push allowing them back into my life. So I kind of let them back in slowly at arm's length. When my husband got cancer, I was only 32. My husband passed when I was 38. At his funeral services, my parents started a fight with my husband's family, then left back across the country for me to deal with the aftermath. Ugh. Like I literally had to put my body between my parents and an angry mob that was converging down on them, fists in the air. They didn't like me either. They thought I was keeping my husband from them. They had no idea they got more good days than I did, that I was actually pushing them to come visit. That he just was too sick to be out and involved in so much, but I made him the best he could be for them and spend days after helping him recover from any outing. Losing sleep, spending weeks at a time in the hospital with him. I even had hired help just so I could get some sleep, and I had to stop working to solely care for him. They thought I was in it for the money and just wanted him to die. Yes, his brother told me this. Even before he was sick, his brother would fight with me, drunk, when he wanted to fight with my husband. Yeah, I know they were horrible all around for the most part. There were a few good ones, who I loved dearly, but even my husband said it was okay if I never spoke with them again after he passed and witnessed how poorly they treated me. But I'm not going to be the one to stop a dying man from seeing his family, dysfunctional or not. We were both aware of how they could be. He had my back when necessary, but also realized the limitations in support we were both given. It got to feel like he and I were the only ones who really understood he was dying and comforted and supported each other. To have to deal with my own family, 1,200 miles away, whom I already had issues with, was just exhausting. When they started a fight with his family, they did actually have the right mindset. However, they started it and left me to deal with things I was simply going to keep vocal and walk away from keeping the few relationships I had in the family. I also wanted to deal with them and address that on my own time, not while dealing with the death of my husband. I scolded my parents over the phone as they left that day, like I was parenting teenagers. They even admitted they were wrong, a first as far as I can remember. I went very low contact with them after that. So, then, when I had cancer in my face, making speech very uncomfortable and eating not fun either, they accused me of being on drugs, demanded I move in with them and get the help I really needed, i.e. rehab. For what? I don't know. I use a little kanna. It's legal, and I learned about it when my husband had cancer to help him. They treated me like I was lying about everything. Apparently, my ex-roommate spread lies about me using drugs too and somehow had turned my own family against me in this time. I've never lied to them. I may have been too honest at times even. They are well off. In the past 20 plus years, just for perspective, I've borrowed or been gifted less than 10K. Always been guilted about it and never asked for anything that I didn't basically show up in tears thinking I failed as an adult because I couldn't pay my electric bill or asked for tired instead of things I wouldn't use for a birthday or holiday, etc. Moved out at 18, already had 3 jobs and was paying my way. My brother, on the other hand, lived at home, had credit cards in my parents' name he never paid for, milked every dollar. They helped him buy a house and physically packed and moved him simply because he couldn't be bothered. His monetary givings are well in excess of 40K at this point. I was always promised things: land, sales from a land, money to help with a house, and each time I approached them about things they said, not things I had asked for, it never materialized with some excuse or change of plans. I can't tell you how many times I put my life on hold, didn't change jobs for things they said they would do for both me and my husband that never happened until I finally convinced him I knew long ago it was a facade. Still, I held no regrets. Honestly, in my mid-20s, I began to wonder how it seemed I was the only one who retained the morals and values I was raised with, and these people were just so different from those. Sorry, I know it's a lot of background. So, when I had cancer, I told them it's a minor surgery, I would be fine, I can handle this, and I'm a grown woman. I kept them updated, gave them all the info, and more. I hadn't really had much contact, and they really had been horrible about respecting me, even just in keeping politics out of conversations over the years after my husband passed. It was as if they always were looking for a fight with me. They also didn't appreciate me not tolerating it in healthy ways and making boundaries respectfully about what kinds of conversations I'd be willing to have, how I could respect our differences, and we have plenty to talk about other than that. Needless to say, it was strained. I knew, having surgery, my biggest battle would be being the patient and not the caregiver, and having severe PTSD from all the time I had spent dealing with my husband dying. I certainly didn't want them there in the hospital when I woke up, as they just stressed me out to no end. I really told them they didn't need to come up, but they did anyways. It was COVID as well, and having surgery on my mouth left me in a vulnerable position all around. I asked that they stay in a hotel across from the hospital instead of at the hospital as their travel. They were not going to be let into the hospital and arranged for them to receive a call and updates from my team. I made sure I had who I trusted and needed by my side. They wanted to spend time with me prior to surgery. We went to lunch. Then I had planned to do more but got the worst case of food poisoning I've ever had. Landed at urgent care and isolated myself to a bathroom for days leading up to surgery. I was simply not able to do anything. IDK what they thought, but it was like I did it on purpose. That I was shutting them out. They threw tantrums. Then, when surgery day came, I called them pre-surgery, put all plans into place. Remember, I'm good at this hospital stuff, and went under the knife. All hell broke loose. They lied their way into the hospital, got in a fight with my very new, very worried BF, who was having PTSD himself as his mother dies from cancer, and we had only known each other 6 weeks. But he understood cancer like I did, and had my back more than anyone else in my life at that moment. We didn't work out, but I'm grateful I had someone who understood by my side. My parents got the Self-X kicked out of the hospital they never should have been in. Their antics got me put on security lockdown and they never got an update. Why, nobody did. They caused all my plans to now be null and void due to their actions. I woke up in a full-on panic, unable to verbally communicate, jaw one half sewn shut, freaking out alone. Why, my BF went home to get something and take a small break knowing it would be a while. He mentioned this, didn't live far, and was assured he'd be allowed back in. He was not. And nothing was properly documented with shift change and he couldn't even get any info on me. All because my parents could not respect my very simple, very reasonable boundaries for my own mental health. I tried to get the nurses to give me a pen and paper, but they thought I was a threat. Even though I made it well known, my biggest worry in all this was that I'd wake up in a panic attack and to please make everyone aware. I took all precautions. Really. They called security on me and I needed someone to understand me. Panicking in that moment, I isolated myself to the bathroom so I could calm down. Security finally gave me a pen and paper and I was able to communicate what I was going through at the moment. I was able to get my hospital belongings and obtain my cell phone after that. Somehow, I kicked into caregiver mode that I had known all too well and treated like a job when my husband was sick. I realized I hadn't been on pain meds, was really only there for observation, didn't have any support there, and was treated poorly by staff. One of them even made racist remarks against me. I'm white. I managed to talk to the charge nurse, clinically went through my chart, spoke with my doctor, and checked myself out. I had been trying to contact my BF, but was unable to get a hold of him. I didn't know he had been on the other line with the hospital the entire time, trying to get any information about me at all, as he had not even been updated if I was out of surgery or not being able to get a hold of him. I called my parents. I just needed out of that building. My parents showed up. I got into the rental car and my mother started screaming at me. Keep in mind, I can barely speak. Having any conversation with them over the years is difficult to get a word in edgewise, never mind with a speech impairment. They were yelling at me that I shouldn't have left the hospital, yet they showed up to pick me up. Screaming at me that I need to stop doing drugs. What drugs? I don't even take pain meds. I don't like them, and they don't work on me. I got one of those, that's it, you're moving in with us, and this is what you're doing speeches. How I was ruining my life, blah, blah, blah. Somehow I had managed to ask them to drive me to my boyfriend's house where my car was. We got about half a mile from there and I couldn't take it anymore. I banged my fist on the ceiling of the car and told them to pull over. Screamed as much as I was able that I wasn't on drugs. They need to get help themselves. This isn't how you treat family. This isn't the time. And why can't you just be here to support me? I asked for something simple. Go back home. I don't want to see you again. I got out of the car, waited for them to drive off, and walked to my boyfriend's house. He was still yelling on the phone with the hospital, trying to find out any information about me, was a little bit more than confused when I walked in. So we got into a fight, and I drove to a friend's house to get some rest and calm. A few hours later, I listened to my voicemail. I had angry messages yelling at me for all that happened when I was under anesthesia, demanding I fix this right now. That my parents never got a phone call about my status and it. It was all my fault. I planned this, that my boyfriend is a horrible person. I need to stop doing drugs and get my life together, blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what had happened at all when I was in surgery. I had no idea until that message that had even happened. My boyfriend had been so upset, but also didn't want to tell me because I just got out of surgery. I didn't even know for a few days that he had an audio recording of the fight. My parents are delusional. There were a lot of angry text messages sent back and forth as I try to explain I'm not responsible for things that happen while I'm under anesthesia, that I'm not doing drugs, I've never lied to them, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about, because all they needed to do was follow the plan, and everything would have been fine. Their actions compromised my care, yet they were still demanding an apology, and demanding I move down with them and go to rehab for the drugs I wasn't taking. This was all way too much drama in a time it should have been less stress, not more stress, added by family. Current day. Well, When I called my mother back yesterday after hearing my father had passed, I was pretty quiet. She started telling me in detail how things happened. I really didn't know what to say. I was seriously trying to come up with something kind, but also true to support her. I am the only close relative she has that knows what she's going through, who's lost a husband. Apparently, my 7 seconds of silence and trying to figure this out was too long for her. She started with an attitude, "Aren't you going to say something?" I said, "I'm trying to be kind here." And she cut me off. I would have finished that sentence as, "I'm trying to be kind here, and I'd like to support you. I know what you're going through." Instead, she spoke over me, said, "You don't need to be kind. You've never been kind before." I got defensive. I really had tried to come into this peacefully. I said, "What?" "Every time I allow you back into my life, I try to be kind." I was cut off. The hospital incident was immediately brought up. I tried to tell her I can't be responsible for other people's actions, nor what happens when I'm under anesthesia. What the hell was I supposed to do? She told me I did it all on purpose. I chose that for me. They did everything for me. I wasn't acting myself then. The fight didn't happen like I was told. I told her I had an audio recording of it. There was a hesitation. She switched subjects to another time and another issue, trying to make herself look good, trying to place blame on me for something, then said something that really sent me off. I really didn't want to take it to this place, but the words coming out of her mouth were so delusional, so off base, so completely out of touch with the actual situation. She said to me, "I can't believe you're doing this to me right now. You have no idea what I'm going through right now. I just lost my husband, your father." Yep, no idea. I held my husband's hand when he died. I spent 5 years knowing it would happen. We both did. It was grueling. I spent 5 years trying to give him the best days of his life, that he could have spent the most time with his children and family, and grieve his loss before it even happened. She was a present part of my life this entire time. I communicated my feelings with her throughout. Her statement sent me off. She crossed the line. She invalidated my entire relationship and my entire experience and the 5 years of my life that I gave up completely to care for him. Hard as it was physically and emotionally, I would gladly do it again because I love him. I told her I know exactly what she is going through. "What do you mean? How dare I do this to you now? You're the one who brought it up, just like you started a fight at my husband's funeral and left, leaving me in the aftermath. The hospital wasn't an isolated event. It was just the last one I was willing to tolerate." She said, "All stories have 3 sides, yours, mine, and the truth, and mine is right." Told me I was delusional, that I'm not seeing things straight. I said, "This isn't the first time this has been a pattern of fence over the past 20 years. I pointed out how they still believe my brother wasn't drinking when he got a DUI. I pointed out how poorly I was treated for showing up with kindness when her mother died. I had previously stood up for her to her mother. I then got told I only showed up to family for money. I told her all I ever wanted was real love and support, and I never cared about the money. I said, I don't even know I am wasting my words. You're not going to believe anything I say you haven't for years, and I don't know what I did to deserve that." She said, "Have a nice life," and hung up the phone. A few minutes later, she called back and I sent it to voicemail. It wasn't pretty. I responded in text and decided that's the only way I'm communicating about any of this from now on. Services will be held locally to me. I do want to attend them. I used to make decisions that were best for everyone, and keeping the peace. But I'm not going to let this keep me from my father's funeral. I could really use some advice. Support. What did you do if you were in a similar situation? Do you think I really should go to the services? I spoke with my cousin, told him I was an asshole, told him exactly what I did. Told him basically what I said here, that I'm not proud of it. I snapped my mother obviously came looking for a fight and knew exactly how to get it out of me. He knows she crossed a huge line. Told me he has my back, so he will protect me and stand by my side. Over the years, he and I have shaking our heads more times at family antics, wondering how the stuff is real. He's a great guy with a level head on his shoulders, who also has similar issues with his parents. He's helped me navigate difficult situations before. That has let me know, no matter what, I decide he will always be family. I am so grateful for this. I wish more of my family were like this. Somehow, I don't really feel bad about speaking the way I did, though I know I should. And that makes me really sad. Because that means I have truly lost respect for my parents, and that respect was lost long enough ago for me to be settled about it. For me to stand up for myself without fear of consequences. I've also realized it doesn't matter what I say. They're going to write their own narrative anyways. I came into this wanting to be kind. It's really hard to believe that after so much disrespect, my mother was still willing to command my support and put me down at the same time. I realize now, literally anything I said would have turned into the same conversation. All I ever wanted was to be respected on an equal level as an adult. I did the work to deserve it.